Welcome, everybody, back to the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast with your hosts, Chase Steffes and Derek Larger. It has been a long time since we've been able to get back into this. We both have been busy, especially with the holidays. We wanted to spend time with our families. So we are back at it, and we are going to cover a lot over the next 4 or 5 months, especially with the playoffs coming up, the Super Bowl, the national title for college football, the combine, the pro days, the draft, you name it. We're going to be here giving you guys information, doing mock drafts later on, and figuring out who teams are going to take and who we feel are best. We're going to do several of them along the way, but let's get into it. Today's show. Over the weekend, we finally got some news, and Derek, he didn't even get to finish the season because it was that bad with players fighting on the sidelines with each other, fighting with other teams. It was just horrible. And that news was that Nathaniel Hackett got fired from the Denver Broncos via the new ownership. Because for those that don't know, the Denver Broncos got new ownership, and with that new ownership taking over, they want to start fresh at head coach. George Paton, his job is safe, Derek, but your thoughts on the Nathaniel Hackett firing? I thought it was a good move. Nobody was clicking in that organization with him. Players were not, he lost the locker room a long time ago, and Russell Wilson's a former shell of himself this year.
Yeah, I mean, you called it so long ago, early in the season, and I agreed with you. I'm like, I am not surprised by this. When it came to what was going on this season, we know that the Denver Broncos, who many people said was, supposed to be a playoff team with the chance of, potentially winning a Super Bowl. You got this great quarterback coming in and, this amazing defense and, things are going to start looking good for this team. And, this is the best chance they've had to go to a Super Bowl in literally like 6 or 7 years. And sure enough, they're one of the worst teams in the NFL. Honestly, you could make the argument that Denver might be the worst team in the NFL at the moment. And that's just how bad their offense has been from all of this going on. And like you said, over the span of the season, Nathaniel Hackett has failed to control his locker room. Guys still love each other. We saw the whole issue on the sideline on Christmas Day when they're in LA. And then you had one of the offensive linemen pushing the backup quarterback and, some things getting chippy over there. Now, I will admit, I saw the transcript of those two guys when they were talking outside, like once the game is over. And then they said, we still love each other. It's just a competitive thing. When you're not doing well, some things are misunderstood. So I get that. I think that those two are cool, but it goes way beyond that, right? It goes way beyond it. You've had the thing with the Melvin Gordon thing that may or may not be true. You've had guys that are openly yelling at Russell Wilson for not getting things figured out. And, offensively, there's just no explanation as to why this team is so terrible offensively at what they're doing. So at the end of the day, you have to look at it and understand that, this team and the GM even came out yesterday and said, hey, we know Russell Wilson is fixable. We know that he's capable of being a great quarterback still. Well, if that's what you firmly believe, then it makes you think that he's not being put in a great position to succeed, and that falls on the head coach. So, like you said, with the team not performing to expectation, game management not being good. We saw poor game management week 1, Chase. I mean, when they played Seattle and then they got to the 45-yard line of Seattle with 1 minute left and then let the clock go all the way down to 28 seconds before calling a timeout and even running a play. That's when everyone knew, this is not good. And, like you said, losing the locker room and everything else. So it's no surprise. Nate Hackett just wasn't hacking it.
No, you're right, though, because we've seen a lot of coaches over the years end up, not panning out, especially after their first season. Zach, look at him. I don't even think duct tape will fix this situation, Zach. But anyway, with the way that with the way that the Broncos have been playing, you're right. I think that they are the worst team in the league. I think if the Texans played them right now, they would win. I think if the Bears played them right now, they would win. 100%. And they do think Russell Wilson is fixable. You also look at that roster. Jerry Jeudy's been in and out of that lineup all year long. Cortland Sutton's been a former shell of himself. He's basically got a discounted Seattle Seahawks roster with a great defense, but a terrible offense. Like you got a knockoff DK Metcalf and a knockoff Tyler Lockett on your team, and you're not performing well because this offensive line's also giving up crazy sack numbers. Russell Wilson's the third most sacked quarterback in the league at this point in time, and it's just ridiculous with the way that things are playing. Like, it's also I also go based off of the poor coaching and off of the play calling, but that's just a conversation for another day. I think Russell Wilson is fixable, but if we get a new guy in there and then you have somebody else take over and Russell's still playing like trash, they're going to have to find a way to get out from underneath that contract. Otherwise, they are going to be screwed.
Right.
Moving on to the next topic is with Nathaniel Hackett being fired, that leaves 3 coaching openings available. And with that happening, there could be a lot more. There could be a lot more that we're going to see. I still have a feeling that Brandon Staley, even though the Chargers made the playoffs this year, I still feel like he's going to get fired at the end of the season because throughout the season, he's made dumb decisions, poor calls. If it wasn't for a kick in the Browns game, they would have lost that one. They'd be probably on the fringe of missing the playoffs again this year. I think that with Sean Payton looming and creating a coaching staff, that is a guy that is probably going to be willing to take over the Chargers job if that happens. I could also see the Texans firing Lovie Smith and starting new, especially with Bryce Young about to come in there. I can see Todd Bowles being out as the Buccaneers head coach. There's going to be a lot of coaching vacancies, Derek. I'm predicting about 7, maybe 8 total that we'll see. And it's going to be very interesting to see who we've got going. Now, I'm going to give you my list, my top 5 list of candidates that I have to take over for these, for the teams. Because right now there's only 3. We're going to list 5 coaches. There's going to be more openings. We just got to wait for, that Monday after the season's over with from when these teams fire. So, Derek, let's give our top 5 coaching candidates on who we think is going to be, 5 through 1 getting hired in. Derek, you want to go first or do you want me to?
You go ahead, go first.
Okay. So my number 5 candidate, if I was the GM of a team right now, these are the candidates I would interview in order. Starting off at number 5, I would interview Brian Flores. A lot of these teams out there want offensive-minded head coaches because with their young quarterbacks, how are they going to pan out? We've seen defensive coaches be very successful in this league, and we've seen them hire tremendous offensive coordinators. I mean, Dan Campbell, look at him with the Lions. He's not an offensive guy. He's not a defensive guy, but he hired a great offensive coordinator to come in and call plays. Brian Flores has been a head coach in this league before. He was a head coach for the Dolphins for 2 seasons before getting fired and being replaced by Mike McDaniels. And in both of his seasons, he went 9-8 and, almost led the Dolphins to the playoffs. And after starting off 1-7 in one season, he rattled off pretty much 8 straight wins to end the season at 9-8. So I think Brian Flores is a fantastic candidate for a head coaching position next year. And I think that he should be one of the guys that is being looked at as there. My number 4 guy, I would honestly go with the 49ers defensive coordinator. Yes, another defensive-minded guy. But then again, with the way that he's bringing about that defense, the way that he's, being a leader amongst men, there's been times he's taken over and he has, just led this team to, come together at a point in time where it was the lowest. And, to be able to bring all these guys together, especially on the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball, it really shows the character and the way that these guys are talking and raving about him. it shows wonders for that team. The third guy I would interview on this list is, Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy has been a hot commodity for a lot of people being in the front running for interviews over the past few seasons. Now, why he doesn't have a head coaching job, I don't know. Maybe the interviews are not working out. Maybe he's, turning down the jobs to put more on his resume, because with him being a black offensive coordinator and potentially a black head coach, with that in the league, we are seeing very few successful ones, and maybe he just wants to stockpile his resume to be able to come in to a coaching situation where he can be like, all right, I've got this on my resume. If we fail, it's because the team wasn't ready or because of this. I don't know. Eric Bieniemy is still calling the plays for the Chiefs. He's still doing what he's doing. I think he's still a great candidate to be interviewed. And my opinion changed on this, Derek. I had a different guy at number 2 before, but I'm going to actually go with the Eagles offensive coordinator, because with the way that the Eagles offense has been clicking over the past, however many weeks now, and they've been one of the top, scoring offenses in this league, it remains to be seen on what, he can do coming in. Everybody says Nick Sirianni's calling the plays. Well, he's passing it off to his offensive coordinator to be able to, work on his resume and build it up to call a few plays. And obviously they do an offensive game plan hand in hand together. And my number one guy, it's pretty obvious. Zach Taylor last year, when it came time for the Super Bowl, was raving about this guy, said that he would bring him on his coaching staff as an offensive quality control coach. And Dan Campbell liked this guy so much that he promoted him to offensive coordinator so he could not be poached. And that is Ben Johnson. We have seen over the past couple weeks, including this Panthers game where they were down, 31-7, and then they clawed their way back, and it was 37-23 to the final score. But Ben Johnson has been one of the leading candidates for the head coaching job in the future. And I think that he'll be the top coaching candidate this offseason if he continues to build his offensive repertoire, and then especially if he gets the Lions into the playoffs. So I think that Ben Johnson is probably the number one guy this offseason that will get a lot of interviews and probably get a head coaching position this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can really disagree with just about all those names that you mentioned. Of course, there's a lot more of them that go into this, and for specific teams, especially for my Colts, we'll have to, I think that the Colts are going to try to go offensive minded, of course, but at the end of the day, I nominate Mr. Larger as head coach and Mr. Chase. I love how he used my last name and your first name as defensive coach. Hey, listen, I mean, that would probably work very well. Because I can manage the game very well. And Chase, I don't know how well you do with figuring out defenses or not, but that would probably be a good idea. But yeah, for your names, I can't really go too crazy on the ordering of it. I think there's a few other names that garner attention outside of just, I think those are just the 5 names specifically, and especially Ben Johnson. Like you said, I think Ben Johnson is going to be receiving calls from about from at least a dozen teams this offseason about, potentially coming in. And, you mentioned it the other day, talking about, we'll kind of go off on a tangent here for a split second. The Sean Payton news. Apparently there was that coming out that apparently he's putting a team of coaches together to come back into the league.
Honestly, if he comes back in, that'd be my number one guy, and Ben Johnson would be number 2.
And from what I have heard is the top 3 teams that are in the hunt for him right now, and his collection of coaches, are the Broncos, the Arizona Cardinals, and the Indianapolis Colts. Those are the top 3 at this moment. Because the problem is you bring Sean Payton in, if he has a bunch of guys that he wants to bring in, then you need to make room, right, for what Sean Payton wants to do. Now, for me personally, I think that, for when you're talking about, the Broncos and the Broncos, they're just a mess right now. I mean, the thing is with those three teams, they're all messes, right? Like the problem with the Arizona Cardinals, they're a mess everywhere from down below. And it's the same thing for the Broncos. It's the same thing for the Colts, right? There's lacking a thing in the locker room that's gathering people together. So
See, I don't see those teams happening because I was watching this live when Sean Payton said this on TV. Now, I don't know if he said it just to boost ratings or whatnot, but he said that he would want to go to a good situation instead of going to a bad situation because he wants to be able to step in and, take over right away and be able to lead the team to a Super Bowl. And he does not want a team that has dysfunction and everything like that. And one of the things that that was asked right in front of his face is, what about Cleveland? They've got a great roster, a great starting quarterback that they just got. Would you be open to taking that job? He's like, Cleveland was the leading candidate of dysfunction for a while. They've obviously got a stable front office in there now. They've got good draft picks. They've got a great team. He's just like, if I'm going to go there, I need to make sure that my stability is in check for, 5 to 7 years before I would even think about taking that job. But he's like, I have not ruled it out and I have not ruled it off the table if they came to him. He said the Chargers would also be a good choice for him as well. And he said he would not rule out going to the Cowboys if Jerry Jones reached out to him. So, it's very interesting that you say the Colts, the Cardinals, and the Broncos because they're having a lot of dysfunction right now. And I think the top three choices that he would choose if they have their coaching candidates available would be the Browns, Chargers, and Cowboys.
Interesting. Browns, Chargers, and Cowboys. I don't know about the Cowboys. I think that the Cowboys would be fine with keeping Mike McCarthy right now, but
if you can get Sean Payton in there, you're definitely getting rid of Mike McCarthy.
I don't know. It'd be interesting because, like you said, again, the problem is you got a collection of coaches. It's not just about Sean Payton. If the reports are true that Sean Payton's bringing some guys in, then it's not just about replacing the head coach. It's about replacing everyone else that Sean Payton wants to bring in. Now, I could see for the Cowboys in the fact that, their coordinators might get jobs. Kellen Mond has definitely been a guy that has been linked to a bunch of different jobs. So he might potentially get an offer at some point. He may move on.
Yeah.
We could see that. So it'll be very interesting to see where that goes from there.
And as far as Stefanski goes, I know that Watson has been raving about him, how he was part of the reason why he came to Cleveland was because of the way Stefanski was. But like with the past couple of weeks that's been going on, I think it's just fluff. I think he's just saying that for media purposes. I think that, he's losing the locker room, especially since he benched Myles Garrett for a whole defensive series last week. Because of some issues that happened. I don't know what it was or anything like that, but, regardless of what it was, he benched Myles Garrett. And I think that with the way that his plays have been going the past couple weeks, he's been relying. There was a report that came out saying that they're relying more on Paul DePodesta, in the analytical part in the front office to figure out what plays would be the best. So, it's very interesting. I think that Kevin's job is safe at the moment, but if they get a chance to hire Sean Payton, they might honestly get rid of Kevin and just scrap it and go with Sean Payton because pairing him up with Deshaun Watson and that team will be lethal and deadly. But if not, I just see the defensive staff and the special teams coach getting fired and then a whole new guy coming in. So it'll be interesting. But Derek, what are your top 5 head coaching candidates? Do you have any different opinions?
No, I don't. I think maybe outside of Brian Flores, I think I could probably put 1 or 2 different names in there. But outside of that, your top 4, I can't really disagree.
Okay. Who would you replace Brian Flores with?
Well, I think a couple other offensive-minded guys come to mind. I think that, I know your opinion on Ken Dorsey. I know you are one of those people that are saying, like, first year in a system, try not to think too much of it. but I definitely could see that being a thing, especially for somebody who is really searching for a offensive minded guy and knowing what Ken Dorsey has done for this offense of Buffalo this year, making it an even more vertical scheme. I think that a lot of people would find that appealing, but that's probably the only change I would make.
Okay, so here's my take on Ken Dorsey. I've already told you this, but I'm going to reiterate it for everybody that's watching. So, my take on Ken Dorsey is when Brian Daboll was in this offense looked a lot better than what it is now. They were scoring more points per game. They were like on the edge of the seats. We even saw that battle that was going back and forth between Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen last year. With 13 seconds left, they thought it was a wrap. They thought the Bills had it won, but no. Brian Daboll was a great offensive-minded coach, a great offensive coordinator, calling the plays and everything. And, with the Giants, he's had a great season with them. But the thing is, Ken Dorsey steps in. Now, you've got two things that are wrong with Ken Dorsey. One is you can either blame it on Josh Allen and the way that his elbow is, or you can blame it on Ken Dorsey and his play calling. Because for the first 6-7 weeks of the season, Josh Allen was an MVP candidate. He was lighting up the league. His offense was looking great. Nobody was stopping that offense. And towards the middle of the season and towards the end of the season, we're seeing it kind of fall out, hit a stalemate. There was teams that were beating the Bills that we didn't think that would beat them. There was times where they only scored 20 points per game. And like I said, is that a Ken Dorsey problem or a Josh Allen issue with his elbow? We don't know that for sure. I think that Ken Dorsey is fresh in this system. He's a fresh offensive play caller. And, he is trying to figure out what works best for the Buffalo Bills. Give him one more season, and then my opinion might change on him. But, you could say the same thing with Ben Johnson. This is his first year calling plays for the Lions. I don't think so. I think he called plays last year.
Yeah, he got promoted after the 2020 season. So he's technically been doing it now for 2 years.
Okay, so 2 years. But the thing is, the offense has gotten so much better with Detroit. But if you put Ben Johnson on the Buffalo Bills, I have a strong suspicion that offense gets 10 times better than what it is now. And that's my hesitation for Ken Dorsey and why I don't think he is such a good candidate at the moment. We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see when Josh is healthy and what he can fully do next year. But at the moment in time, Ken Dorsey would be in my latter half of interviews. He'd be like my 7th or 8th guy that I would interview for a head coaching position. But, I have not ruled the door out on him yet, but I want to see more of what he can do with this offense because it's kind of been stagnant and stale for the latter half of the season. All right. So moving on to the next thing, we have seen this past weekend, the Houston Texans won another game against the Tennessee Titans, moving that to 2 wins. What is it? 11 losses and 1 tie, Derek?
2 wins, 12 losses, 1 tie.
Okay. So with that tie at this moment in time and not it being a win or a loss, they still hold that number 1 overall pick over the Chicago Bears. But the thing is, if the Chicago Bears lose out and the Texans can somehow either beat the Jags next week or win their week 18 matchup, then the Bears will get the number 1 overall pick, and we will not see a quarterback get drafted number 1 overall. We might honestly see, if we have a situation where the Bears get the number 1 pick, seeing them trade out and having another team come up to that number 1 overall spot. But Derek, is it possible that the Bears get the number 1 pick?
It's absolutely possible. I mean, when you're talking about, who does Houston have in the last 2 weeks? They have the Jacksonville Jaguars this next week, which, it's an AFC South divisional game. Things happen within this division that just you never see coming.
And then they got the Indianapolis Colts.
Then they got the Indianapolis Colts, who also, by the way, are fighting for that top spot, even though we know we can't get it. But it's at a point where, Houston, you're right. If Houston wins at least one of those games and Chicago loses out, you're right. It's very, very possible. And with the way Houston has been playing, they definitely could end up, doing that. it just ultimately comes to fruition, like when you're trying to figure out, like, if Houston does win one more game, then it kind of gets them into a situation where, like, see, I don't think Houston really cares too much, because either way, if Houston wins their last 2 games, they're still getting a top 5 pick, regardless of if they win their last 2 games. If they even win both, I highly doubt they win both. But even if they so were to win one, they may end up finishing with, like, potentially, I think they'd finish with the second overall pick, which, I mean, is not the end of the world, because unless you're worried about the idea of, somebody coming in and taking the quarterback that you want. That's the problem, right? If the Bears traded it away, what would you do, right? So it'd be very interesting to see if they do end up winning either one of these games. I really don't want the Colts. I want the Houston Texans to beat my Colts in week 17 or 18 for a little bit, because I mean, again, if Houston were to win out, then that move them back, and then
3 spots.
Move them back quite a bit. So I do believe there is a chance that the Chicago Bears do end up with the number 1 overall pick, and if they do end up with it, there's some decisions that are going to be made, because there's some quarterbacks in the first round this year that are definitely going to garner some attention. And I find it hilarious, Chase. I don't know what it's like in the Browns fan base. You can tell me if this is the same, but like Colts fans, like a lot of Colts fans, they say, I don't even want a quarterback this year. All of them just suck. Like, I mean, it's hilarious. The amount of unintellectual people that keep saying that all these quarterbacks are just people that don't need to be. But
well, people, I can see their argument, because like next year's class is looking pretty good. You got Caleb Williams, you got Drake May, you've got the guy from Clemson that just transferred and everything. What was his name? DJ.
I don't remember how to specifically pronounce his last name. I'd have to make sure I look it up, so that way I don't.
Yeah, they've got a good draft class next year.
They definitely do. I'm not gonna deny that, but like, I mean, it's a illogical fallacy for people to say, oh, we should just ignore this year's draft class just because of the fact that maybe next year's is better. Who knows? Maybe Caleb Williams, has a season-ending injury, or he ends up falling back to earth, right? Because he's part of Lincoln Riley's system. Maybe Drake May, who's, a redshirt freshman, maybe he's actually not as good as what it turned out to be. Like, it's always, I talked with somebody from the Blue Stable that I talk to sometimes. Rashad always talks to me about it and says the grass always looks greener on the other side when you're waiting for it. And then when the time comes for it to actually look good, yeah, there's 1 or 2 guys. Yeah, there might be. But like, that's 1 or 2 guys. And there's 32 teams. Like, everyone wants it. And just to think that you would still have a good shot at it, it's just not how the NFL football game works. It's not how that works. You don't go out every year to suck just to do something like that. This isn't the NBA where teams know how trash they are and they tank. Okay, that's just not how it goes. So, you have to take advantage of the quarterbacks that you have. But if Chicago gets that number 1, I mean, it's going to be very interesting, because, yeah, what team would trade up to get their spot, right? Because you see a prime opportunity for a team that's not going to draft one and to sneak in and get the one that you specifically want. I could imagine probably 7 or 8 teams that are going to be calling for that opportunity right there.
Now, the thing is, like, you got a big controversy, Derek, because as a Colts fan, I need your perspective on this, and I need your opinion. So I was doing some calculation, doing some doing it in a prediction type thing. And if the Bears lose out, the Texans win 1 game. The Bears get the number 1 overall pick, and the Texans get the number 2 overall pick. But we also have a situation to where if the Cardinals and the Broncos both win 1 more game, and the Colts lose out, they could have the potential to get the 3rd overall pick. The question I have for you is, if you guys get that 3rd overall pick, would you want to trade higher or would you want to stay where you're at? Now, I can also see if you guys are at that 5th or 6th spot that you may want to trade up to that number 1 overall pick because of the teams like the Panthers, teams like the Saints, teams like the Bucks that are going to be looking for that next big key quarterback for the future. I can see teams like that trading up. So do you think that the Colts need a quarterback that badly that they would move up just 2 spots to get him? Or do you think that they would stay where they're at if they had that?
Well, I mean, how many times have we seen teams even trade up 2 or 3 spots to go and get a quarterback? I mean, I just talk about 2018 when the Colts had the 3rd overall pick and the Jets traded from 3 to 6 from 6 to 3 to go and get Sam Darnold. Right. So, it's not very rare that happens. And you're right. If the Colts were to finish like 6 or 7 and if they were to finish like 7th and then, had to trade it into the top 4, then I could definitely see that, that definitely would happen. Or trying to trade up with Chicago, wherever Chicago would end up. I absolutely would see that happening. It definitely is something that the Colts need to do. So, but I do see, it depends on where we end up because I don't know how these last 2 weeks are going to go. I know the Colts try, but their offense is so pitiful at this point. I don't know if we can. I honestly don't even know if we can beat the Houston Texans at this point because, our defense has been phenomenal, man. Like we've been keeping our opponents to 20, 23 points per game every single game, giving ourselves a chance, but we just don't score. We just don't score offensively. And I don't know. It's going to be very interesting because, you just look at some of the teams. I mean, Houston and Chicago, they're fighting for that number 1 pick right now. We know Houston wants a quarterback. When you got Denver's pick that's going to Seattle, we're unsure at this moment on whether or not they're actually going to getting one. You talk about Arizona. I mean, there's been reports that apparently, they're not happy with Kyler Murray. And
if they could trade Kyler Murray,
I don't know who they'd trade for, but I don't know who would be willing to take that on. But maybe like the Panthers maybe would, or, maybe one of these teams, which would be great with me because if one of these other teams, are taking Kyler Murray and don't want to trade up for a quarterback, that makes it even better. But, Indy's sitting at that number 5. I looked at the numbers, Chase, and I saw that the worst case scenario for the Colts is that if the Colts win out and every single team below them lost or kept losing as well, every single one of them, worst case scenario, they'd end up at like number 10. So we would still keep a top 10 draft pick if we somehow won out. But I think we both know that's kind of a fallacy at this moment. And of course, Atlanta, Rams, Carolina, Vegas, New Orleans, and Cleveland, one of them will at least win one more game. But, it's one of those situations the Colts can end up with the number 3 pick. We could end up with probably the 9th pick at this point. So anywhere in the top 10, we're going to be all over the place, but you got to be careful because there's about 3 or 4 teams that are going to be calling Chicago for that pick at some point in the near future.
Yeah, no. And Ryan Poles said that he is definitely a guy that would trade back, especially with the way Justin Fields has been playing and having him as your franchise guy. That you're not taking a quarterback. Now, the thing is, the Colts have to look at themselves in the mirror because if they get that 3rd overall pick, do you move up 2 spots to that number 1 overall pick to take the quarterback that you guys want rather than the one that falls to you? So if they think Bryce Young is the best quarterback, and now you have your choice between Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, or Will Levis on those 3 guys, who do you think is going to be the best option rather than taking the next best thing falling to you at the third spot when you could trade up to number one. Now, granted, it's probably going to cost 3 first rounders, maybe a late third or fourth rounder for next year, and then maybe a fourth rounder for 2024 and 2025. Who knows what that would be, but to get your franchise guy of the future, Derek, I think it would be the right move, the smart move, and the bold move to be able to do that. Now, if the Bears are going from 1 to 3 or even 1 to 5, I really don't think that they're going to have a big issue, because especially if they're dropping down to 3, that the Houston Texans are right after the Colts. You're like, cool, Bears are going to take the next best defensive player. They're going to take Willie Anderson or Jalen Carter. And then they'll be like, we got 3 first-round picks for the next 3 years. Let's build this team around Justin and build a powerhouse with them. I'm like, they would be cool with that, because if they know that they don't need a quarterback and they know that they can get 2 or 3 first rounders in exchange and still get one of the top defensive guys, I think that they would jump on that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I agree. It's Chicago. Chicago's the wild card, because they could honestly trade back like 2 or 3 times in this draft. And I'm not even joking. Like, say they do end up with number 1, and then somehow, some way, Indianapolis, is number 3, right? Then, the Colts trade up, and then maybe Carolina wants to trade up again. There could be a couple times when Chicago might keep trading back, because they may keep accumulating these first round draft picks. So
maybe.
Which they kind of want, because, they've been trying to get these draft picks for a while, but they haven't been able to accumulate them with trades in the way that they felt that they deserve with some of these players they've been trading away. Maybe this is their opportunity, right?
Maybe, and building that
trade further
line
back into the top 10. You still can get some offensive line help. You could still get some defensive help, and then of course, you're accumulating, if they traded back 2 times or even just once, like getting extra first round draft picks to help with building your team for the future with Justin Fields. So, it might be in their best interest to keep trading back.
Yeah, honestly, if they could get 3 first rounders next year, that's huge. You can get a couple offensive linemen, get a couple weapons, maybe build your defense, whatever it may be. You'll see that from the Chicago Bears. And that's the thing. Like, I don't remember the last time was that they had the number 1 overall pick. They've had it one time in their history. But this draft is going to be very interesting, Derek, because we will see a lot of trades, especially within the first 5 picks. We'll see, a lot of teams trading up, trading down, whatever it may be, but we will see a lot of trading in this draft to start with, and not like the last draft where we waited until after pick 10 before we saw our first trade and everything. So it's going to be very interesting. Like you said, they could trade back twice, accumulate more first-round picks, help build around Justin Fields, and build for that future. So it's going to be very interesting to see, And for those of you that are like in this chat now, looking at everything, looking at the Houston Texans record, you're going to be like, how are the Bears able to get the number 1 overall pick if the Texans and Bears will have 3 wins each? Because that tie that the Texans have counts as a half loss and a half win. It counts as...
what really grinds my gears, Chase? I was watching this. I was looking at this yesterday. I was talking with Cody about it. So we're like, so say the Texans win out and the Colts lose out, they would have the same record. And I had to remind him that even if the Texans win out and we lose out and we have the same record, the Texans would still have the draft pick ahead of us, simply due to the fact that their strength of schedule is not as strong as ours. So he's like, yeah. Well, what about the head-to-head? Like, yeah, but that only matters in division rankings. That doesn't determine draft order.
Yeah, so, it really doesn't. And like that half win, half loss type thing, that's what's going to put the edge for the Chicago Bears over the Houston Texans if that comes down to it. So it's very interesting to see whether or not that they can get the number 1 overall pick. Derek, I know that you're hoping and praying that the Bears do get the number 1 pick, so that way you can see something happen with the Colts. We'll have to wait and see. Moving on to our next topic, we ended up choosing our predictions from last week and the week before, And Derek, what is the final synopsis right now for this, like going into this week on who's leading? I think you're leading by what, 6 games?
5 games currently.
5 games.
5 games. So right now, so we did week 15 and 16. We weren't able to do a podcast after the week 15 stuff, but Chase and I both had positive records in week 15, although Chase did have me by a game. He went 9-6. I went 8-7.
I picked the Jaguars and the Texans.
You and I did absolutely atrocious. We both had losing records last week. You went 7-8 and I went 6-9. So yeah, he had me beat by one more game there too. So overall records, Chase this year is 116 wins, 91 losses, and 1 tie. I am so far with 121 wins, 86 losses, and 1 tie. So we can go ahead and give our predictions for week 17 because that's what we need to do. So Chase, I think you and I both said Cowboys, right?
Yes, sir.
Cowboys versus the Titans. There's
yeah.
a lot riding on this this last week, folks. And the Titans right now, I mean, the Titans are fighting right now, but there's huge implications for this too, because the Titans are facing the Cowboys. And the Titans are desperately trying to hold on to a grasp that they can still win the division in the AFC South. And the only way they can do that, the only way they can do that is if they went out, because they lost last week and they forfeited the lead to the Jaguars because the Jaguars have the better record right now in the AFC South.
No, they hold the head-to-head. That's the reason why. They got the same record.
Far they'd hold the head-to-head. I don't remember what the Jaguars overall divisional record is versus what the Titans is. I think it's close, but I still think because the Titans and the Jags face each other in week 18, that could be what I think that might do it. But the only thing is that that's a false one, because I think that if the Jags beat the Houston Texans this week, that they automatically get in, because even if they finish with the same record, I think the Jags have the better overall record in the division. So I think ultimately they'd end up winning. So
as of right now, the way it looks, Derek, is if Tennessee loses tomorrow, Jacksonville beats Houston, Jacksonville's still in or like at the moment in the division, they are the leaders. And even if they both lose, Jacksonville's still in the lead because of that head-to-head tie with the Titans. As of right now, the 2 wins that the Texans have is against the Jaguars and against the Titans in their division. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can beat the Texans this week and the Titans lose. That last game of the season really won't matter, especially now that the Titans lost last week. And if they lose this week, if the Jags win this week and then they lose next week to the Titans, the Jags still hold the division.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next, because that was we're going to talk about the AFC and NFC playoff picture. We'll finish the show up with that, but let's go ahead and keep going here. So Cardinals versus the Falcons, my guy. What do you got?
Both crappy teams. Kyler Murray's out for the season. Give me the Falcons.
Okay, I'm going Falcons too. I think Falcons still have a shot at making the playoffs. At least they feel that way. So they got to win out, and I think there's a little more at stake for them. Dolphins versus the Patriots.
Tua's in.
Keep in mind, Tua's out potentially for the rest of the year.
I wouldn't say for the rest of the year, but like
the problem is, Chase, is he's had 3 concussions already this year. Yeah, he's had 3 concussions. If they let him play throughout any part of the rest of this year, they are an abusive organization for allowing that man to play after what had already just happened to him. His brain's already mush.
Yeah, he should definitely just hang it up after this year and just retire, because there's no way that he's going to be able to continue, especially if he gets a 4th concussion and ends up finishing with that. So we'll have to wait and see. But all in all, I could see I could see that, but who'd you say it was? The Dolphins and Patriots. I'm going to go
Dolphins
with
or
the Patriots.
All right. Yeah, I'm going Patriots here. Again, them
Got our
relying
mascot.
on Teddy Bridgewater. I'm not gonna rely on that.
We got our mascot.
Oh, hey, Junie. She got the sweatshirt on and everything.
Yes,
Fantastic.
sir.
How's she feeling? Better than before?
Yeah, she's feeling better. We're giving her medicine and everything, so she's getting better.
Fantastic. Good to hear. Okay, so Saints and Eagles.
I'm gonna go Eagles. I don't see the Saints winning. Gardner Minshew's still gonna light it up and get a win for these Eagles.
Are they just not playing Jalen Hurts, or is he hurt?
He's still got that shoulder sprain. He's gonna be out for this week. He might return for the last week of the season, and they're probably gonna play him for at least the first half, so that way he's not rusty going into the playoffs, especially getting that first round bye.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, they still have a chance for that bye. I was gonna say they're not guaranteed a first round bye yet. They have to win still. They have to win one more game. Because if they lose out and the Cowboys win out, then they would technically lose at that first round bye. So
well, then the Vikings would get that first round bye. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they definitely need to win at least one of their last few games. Colts versus the Giants.
Giants.
Yeah, I'm going Giants too.
after that 33-0 lead, I don't trust the Colts anymore.
Well, that's never going to happen again, but I'm just saying, like,
I don't trust them anymore, though.
The Colts can't score, and especially with the fact that Nick Foles is now the quarterback, I just don't see it.
And Jeff Saturday, what he said just made me laugh.
What did he say?
That picture I sent you.
Whatever picture you sent me, it was not a real quote.
Oh, it wasn't?
Of course it's not a real quote. What did he say? Show me the picture. Did you send it in the group chat?
Yeah, I sent it in our group chat. I don't know if it was real or not, but it says Matt is the worst quarterback I've coached, and I've only coached high school kids.
Yeah, come on. You knew that's not a real quote. It's not a real quote. Don't tell me you fell for that.
I did not, but I feel like it's something he could say or would say.
He might be saying it behind closed doors, but not in real life. Come on, man. Colts can score. They just can't stop the other team from scoring. Zach, shut up, bro. Shut up. All right. Panthers versus the Buccaneers. Huge implications for this game, Chase, because both of these teams still have a shot at making the playoffs.
The Bucs have been just scraping by in the last.
They really have. And the Panthers have been freaking beating some teams' butts recently.
Yeah, the Bucs have just been scraping by with their wins. That Panthers defense is playing great. Honestly, give me the Panthers for this one.
I believe in the Panthers strat. I'm gonna do it too. Broncos versus the Chiefs. Ironic about this one because the last time these two teams played each other, the Broncos almost won. They kept it a close game for all of it. So
it's happened twice this year already. Give me the Broncos. Give me the Broncos versus the Chiefs, and I'm only saying this because we've seen it time and time again. We saw it with Jeff Saturday, and we saw it with who else got fired this season?
With Hackett.
No, Rule. We saw it with the Panthers, and we saw it with Jeff Saturday. When the interim head coach takes over, they always win the next game after that, and they're playing like there's nothing to lose. Give me the Broncos just for this week. I never go against the Colts. I never go against Patrick Mahomes. But for somehow, some way, I have my gut feeling is telling me the Broncos.
I feel what you're trying to say there. I know what you're trying to say, and I get your feeling. But I will say this: the Chiefs facing the Broncos, they see a prime opportunity to take the number one spot in the AFC South or in AFC this week when the Bills play the Bengals, and if the Bengals beat the Bills and the Chiefs end up winning, then the Chiefs end up taking that number 1 seed in the AFC South playoff picture. I'm going with the Chiefs. There's just still too much at stake for the Chiefs to take this lightly. So I'm going to go.
They've had a lot of close games lately. The Texans, the Broncos, they went to overtime versus the Texans. And
I understand that. I know, but the Chiefs are still, the Chiefs still pull it out. The Broncos are just not good right now. Bears versus the Lions.
Give me the Lions, but it's close.
Yeah, I agree. Go with the Lions here.
It's very close because I feel like
Browns versus the Commanders.
Keep in mind Carson Wentz is starting this week, but
he is starting this week.
I still am going with the Browns. I still think that they got a better team, a better offense, better defense.
I'm going with the Commanders. Commanders still have a shot at the playoffs. They're getting Chase Young back this week. I think that they'll be able to make some things work. Okay. Jaguars versus the Texans.
Jags.
I'll go Jags too.
Finally going with the Jags after that Cowboys performance. You're finally choosing the Jags.
Yes, I am. I thought the Jags were good, but they just keep freaking winning somehow. 49ers versus the Raiders.
49ers.
Yeah, I take 49ers as well. All right. Jets versus the Seahawks.
Give me the Jets. Mike White is back starting.
Yeah, Mike White is back. We know how the Jets feel about him. I'll take the Jets. Vikings versus the Packers.
Give me the Packers.
You know what? I'm going with the Packers too. I think that there's some bad blood there from week 1. And I think that the Packers know they still got a shot at the playoffs. That here's the thing here, Chase. If Green Bay wins out and the Commanders lose one more game, then the Packers can make their way in. If they win out, if they beat the Lions and the Vikings and the Commanders lose at least one and the Giants lose both, then there's a chance. So
we'll have to wait and see because those Lions have been playing hot recently.
That they have.
Last week, it goes to show you the argument that I had with quarterback. I feel like if they had somebody better at quarterback, they would have won that game versus the Panthers because Goff was not having his best performance. But even still, Lions came back and made it a closer game than what it was to start with. But yeah, I honestly see the Lions sneaking into the playoffs, but we'll talk about that with our next segment with the playoff pictures. So,
yep. And then we got the Rams versus the Chargers.
Give me the Rams on this one.
You know what? I'll go Rams too. I'll go Rams as well. Might as well.
Baker and the Rams have been playing really great.
Already in the playoffs. They already know that and so the Rams got nothing to lose. So,
yeah.
Steelers versus the Ravens.
Give me the Ravens. Lamar being back this week, I think that he's out for blood. So,
yeah, same. Bills versus the Bengals.
Bills, baby.
Bills?
Yeah, give me the Bills, baby.
Yeah, I'll go Bills too. It's the smarter decision. All right, so there we go. That's our week 17.
What's the Monday night game?
The only differences we had in opinion was you think the Broncos are going to upset the Chiefs. I don't. I think the Commanders are going to beat the Browns, and you believe, and then that's pretty much it. I think, yeah, you and I, there's only 2 games that we're mixing up a little bit here.
So who's the Monday night game?
That's the Bills and the Bengals.
Ooh,
the fantastic Monday night game, man. Fantastic. Real breaking news. Tua is officially out for week 17. Yeah, we knew that was going to end up happening. They should just seal him out for the rest of the year.
They're not making the playoffs. They're not.
I think they need to.
Nope. Anyway, which brings us on to our next topic. Derek, we were up to 7 viewers in this. Now we're down to 4 again.
I think 7. That might be the most we've ever had in a stream like this before.
That is. So, almost in that double digit marker. I'm happy about that. That means that our show's trending in the right direction and we're getting more people to watch. So that is fantastic. Anyway, moving on to our next topic and our last one of the day. It's talking about the AFC and NFC playoff picture and who we believe are going to be the final teams in. As of right now, in the AFC, the 1 seed belongs to the Bills, 2 seed to the Chiefs, 3 seed to the Bengals, 4 seed to the Jags. Those are all of the division winners so far that we have. And then the 5th seed to the Ravens, 6th seed to the Chargers, and the 7th seed is belonging to the Dolphins. Now, with the win that the Chargers had this past week, Derek, they solidified their place in the playoffs. They could only go up from here. If the Ravens lose out, the Chargers win out, they're going to be at the 5th seed rather than the 6th seed. But at this moment in time, if the Ravens end up winning out, then they're going to have that 5th seed on lock. Let's just talk about the top 3 seeds at the moment. As of right now, they're all one game within each other. So if the Bengals beat the Bills this week and the Chiefs end up winning, the Chiefs got the number 1 the number 1 seed, then the Bengals move up to the 2 seed and the Bills drop to the 3 seed.
Yeah.
Now that's just insane. Now, however, going into the final 2 weeks, this is why I don't think that the Bengals will rest their starters unless they lose this week. Then I think that they will. But if the Bills win this week and the Chiefs win this week and the Bengals lose, the Bengals don't drop below the 3 seed. They're going to remain at that 3 seed right now until the very end, unless the Ravens win out. Because if the Bengals lose this week and the Ravens win, then the Ravens end up going ahead of the Bengals into that.
Who has the head-to-head? Because
right now the Ravens do.
Okay, but I thought the Ravens lost to the Bengals already.
Nope. As far as I can remember, I think the Ravens ended up winning that game by 1. If I'm not mistaken.
I think you're wrong on that.
Monte, step in here and let us know if the Bengals lost, because I'm not 100% sure.
This is Ravens. Yeah, 2022. I want to. Yeah, so the Ravens did win against the Bengals back in October.
Yeah, so right now the Ravens hold the head-to-head.
They play week 18.
They do play week 18, I believe. And this is going to be very interesting because right now, if the Ravens win this week and the Bills beat the Bengals, the Ravens jump the Bengals and go to that 3 seed, and the Bengals drop down to that 5th seed.
Yeah, the only way that the Bengals would rest their starters is if they beat the Bills and the Ravens ended up losing against the Steelers. It's the only way they would do that, because then there's no way that the Bengals would lose their divisional spot. Now, obviously, both teams have clinched a playoff spot, so neither one of them is worried about missing the playoffs. But of course, when you're talking about home field advantage, is much better thing if you're trying to go through your home stadium, especially for the Bengals who had to run the gauntlet last year, right? When it came to everything. So, if the Bengals definitely need to win at least one of their last 2.
Yeah, because if they beat the Bengals week 18, that's a wrap. The Ravens will have the 5th seed, the Bengals will have the 3 seed, or even the 2 seed. It really just depends on how the final few games play out. But either way, they're not going to get that 1 seed if they lose this week. So when we're talking about the 2 teams in the hunt, so there's 5 teams that have currently clinched a spot. That's the Bills, the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Ravens, and the Chargers. So the Chargers are safe even at 9-6. They could lose their last 2. They're still going to be fine. The Jags can clinch a playoff berth and a divisional title if the Titans lose this week and the Jags win.
Which is very favorable for them, because they're facing the worst team in the NFL in the Houston Texans. Very favorable matchup for them. And then, of course, the Titans are facing the Dallas Cowboys, who are fighting for an even bigger spot than what they already are in. And of course, Ryan Tannehill's not playing. So you're facing it's a very favorable situation for Jacksonville. If they go in and handle business this week, we could very well see Jacksonville clinch the division for the first time since 2017. So very big aspirations for them, who most people thought was a decent chance they may actually finish last in the AFC South this year, might end up winning the division. The Dolphins, that's where you start getting interesting.
Hold on, Derek. Let me step in because I was about to go into the fourth to the fifth and sixth pick and stuff right now. So
okay.
As you see, the first four seeds are set in stone at the moment in time, with the way that the divisions are playing in. Now, obviously, that fifth and that 3 seed and that 5th seed are gonna interchange if the Ravens and Bengals play each other and one of them wins the final game of the season. It's going to determine who's going to win the division. However, like I said, the Chargers can bump up to the 5th seed, and the Bengals and or Ravens can drop down to the 6th seed if the Chargers win out and the Bengals lose both of their last 2 games. Then you'll have the Bengals drop all the way down to the 6th seed, and then the Chargers bump up to the 5th seed, and the Ravens will be at the 3 seed, which means you will see a Cincinnati Bengals and Baltimore Ravens playoff matchup if that were to happen, Derek. How insane would that be?
It's insane, dude. It just goes to show you just what is still left. Where there's still the fact that even the Raiders, who are 6-9 right now, that are still capable of somehow getting into the playoffs if a bunch of things go right.
Now, here's where it becomes very tricky. Okay, the Dolphins currently hold the 7th seed in the AFC. So all of the playoff spots in the AFC, except for the 7th seed, are all secure. Okay, so we don't have to worry about anybody missing the playoffs 1 through 6. So they could lose out and they would still hold their spot in the playoffs. However, the 7th seed is the trickiest one because with that extra seeding, now you got a little wiggle room, okay? The Pittsburgh Steelers, after starting off the season the way they did, could finish in the playoffs if they win their last 2 games versus who they got this week? The Ravens and the Browns. And then if they have the Dolphins lose, I think 2 more games. Yeah, they have the Dolphins lose out and the Jets lose 1 game. The Steelers are in the playoffs. Now, the Raiders, the only way that they're going to be able to do it if the Steelers lose out, if the Jets lose out, and the Dolphins lose out. That's the only way the Raiders make it.
And then the Patriots have to lose in week 18.
Yep.
And the Titans would have to
lose this week.
Yeah, they'd have to lose this week too.
Come on,
there's a lot of craziness, man.
Yeah, and then you also got it to where the Jets. Now the thing is, the Dolphins and Jets play each other next week as well. So if the Jets win this week and the Dolphins lose this week, the Jets have that 7th seed secure. All you would have to do is have the Jets beat the Dolphins the last week of the season, and they got that 7th seed under wraps. So it'll be a win and in situation for the Jets. But it's going to be very interesting to see how this week goes out because there's still a lot of teams fighting for that wild card spot that'll come into play. So, the Dolphins, I don't see them winning either of their last 2 games without Tua, to be real honest.
Yeah, I'll probably say the same thing. So let's just think about it. So I think we're both in agreement that we believe that the Jaguars will end up clinching the division. So therefore, it all comes down to the number 7 spot. That means that the top 6 will be locked. So who do you firmly believe is that last team that is going to finish at number 7?
I think since Mike White is healthy, I think him and Garrett Wilson have had a great connection. He's been a commander of that offense really well. The Jets have been on a losing streak because Mike White's been out these last 2 weeks. I think the Jets are going to squeak into the playoffs and they're going to secure that 7th spot.
Yeah, I agree with you because I think that the Patriots' last 2 games are going to be a little bit more crazy. And I think that the Jets with Mike White, like you said, they play so much better with Mike White. And I think that the Titans are going to end up losing this next week. The only thing that's going to suck for the Jets is the fact that they are facing the Dolphins. So, or the Patriots are facing the Dolphins. So therefore, if the Patriots win, they're going to have to rely on a week 18 favorite to be able to win it. But I do believe that the Jets will end up squeaking it out.
The Patriots, though, could sneak in because the thing is they hold both games over the Jets that they won this year. So if the Patriots win out and the Dolphins lose out, the Patriots sneak in over the Jets because they hold both of the wins over the Jets.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that kind of sucks. So I mean, yeah, Patriots control their own destiny at this point. As long as they handle business, then there's nothing stopping them. So,
yep. So moving on to the NFC playoffs now. Okay, so 1 through 5 will go off of that again. So the 1 seed, the Eagles, the 2 seed, the Vikings, the 3 seed, the Niners, the 4 seed, the Bucks, the 5 seed is the Cowboys. Okay. And then the 6th and 7th seed is the Giants, the 6th seed, and the Commanders, the 7th seed. So right now, I think the Giants can clinch a playoff berth if they win this week versus the Colts. So that's good. However, let's go over the 1 through 5 seeding again. So with the 1 seed, the Eagles hold a firm grasp on that 1 seed right now. If they lose, however, this next week, and then the Vikings win, the Vikings get that number 1 seed. And then the Niners can jump up to the 2 seed and the Eagles could fall to the 3 seed if that's the case. Because if the Niners are 11-4, the Vikings are 12-3, and the Eagles are 13-2. So
well, they wouldn't.
I'm sorry.
They wouldn't jump them. Yeah, the Eagles would just move down to number 2. The 49. Now, if the Eagles lose out, then I think the 49ers would end up jumping them. But yeah. So number 1, 2, and 3. And number 5 have clinched. So that number 4 for the NFC South, that has not been clinched yet. Ultimately, I think okay, so I was wrong earlier when I said that the Falcons had a chance to make it in. They don't. The only 2 teams in the NFC South, no, they've been eliminated.
Oh, they have?
The Falcons have been eliminated, yeah. So the 2 teams in the NFC South that are still fighting are the Panthers and the Buccaneers. So
the Saints aren't?
The Saints are not. No, they've been eliminated as well. Or no, they haven't been eliminated. They are 6-9, but they still have a amazing chance to do something. I don't remember who they beat. I don't remember. Did they beat Carolina or did they beat the Buccaneers earlier in the year?
I think they beat the Bucks earlier in the year.
Okay, so they're rooting for whoever they beat earlier in the year. They're rooting for the opposite team to win again. So but at the end of the day, the Buccaneers and the Panthers, that's the huge one, because the Buccaneers currently on the number 4. But if Carolina wins out the last 2 and then they end up beating the Buccaneers, then the Carolina Panthers would sneak in as the division favorite.
I know, so that's insane.
That's insane. Yes. And it's actually a travesty that, like, I guess I shouldn't say it's much of a travesty because, I mean, then again, because it's just the fact that whoever wins that division is going to end up most likely with a losing record or end up just with like a 9-8 record. So it's not that great.
Whoever wins the division plays the Cowboys at this moment in time.
Yeah. So there's 3 teams still left to decide it for the hunt when it comes to the NFC. Obviously, the NFC South still up for grabs. It's ultimately, most of it's going to come down to the Panthers and the Buccaneers this week. Now, if the Panthers lose in week 18 and the Buccaneers end up winning in week 18, then the Buccaneers would still get in. Ultimately, Carolina has to win out in order to even have a chance. So they're very much, there's a lot of stuff riding on that.
Now, Derek, we can see the first time in NFL history where we see an entire division in the playoffs.
Make it into the playoffs.
Because if the Commies win out, then they make it into the playoffs, and then we'll have the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Commanders all in the playoffs. Now, here's the thing: if the Giants win this week, they're in. So I'm not worried about that. They'll beat the Colts. No problem there. The 7th seed, however, is the dynamic thing again this week. So here's some scenarios. If the Browns beat the Commies this week, and then you have the Lions beating whoever they're playing.
They're playing the Bears.
If the Lions beat the Bears, then the Lions jump the Commanders and get into that 7th spot automatically. Now, the Seahawks also have a shot at that 7th seed, but they need both the Lions and Commanders to lose, and they need to beat the Jets. Now, if the Seahawks...
Right, didn't the Lions and Seahawks play each other this year?
No.
Okay.
Or maybe.
Because right now, Seahawks are number 8 on the bubble. So technically, if Seattle wins and Washington loses, then technically Seattle jumps them first.
Right. Seattle does jump them first, but if Seattle somehow loses this week and then the Commies lose and then the Lions win, the Lions jump that. Now, here's a scenario where the Packers make it. The Commanders lose out, the Seahawks lose out, and the Packers win out. The Packers are in that 7th seed for the playoffs. My final prediction that I've got is I think that the Lions are going to sneak into that 7th seed and make the playoffs.
I think that is the most likely scenario. I do believe that, if the Giants, like you said, the Giants take care of business against the Indianapolis Colts this week, then they will have no problem jumping them, and they will end up finishing with a clinch in the playoffs. So that number 6 seed will be secured, and it will be the Giants. But the Commanders have a lot to deal with here, and thankfully for them, they have that tie, right? So really, if they want to secure a spot in the playoffs, their best case scenario is that they win at least one of the last 2, because then that tie holds some weight to it. So that's why they're ahead of, the Seahawks and the Lions and the Packers right now. So the Washington, in order to keep their hopes alive, they have to at least win one of their last 2, and then hope that every team, that the Seahawks, the Lions, and the Packers all lose at least one game. So if the Commanders win out, they're fine. But I don't remember who they play in week 18. But either way, if they want to win and make it into the playoffs, they need to win at least one. And then they need to ensure that the Seahawks, the Lions, and the Packers all at least lose one game. So that's going to be very interesting. It's going to be very, very interesting. And like I was saying before, if the Giants lost both games and Washington lost at least one, and the Packers won out because, and this is great for the Commanders too, because I forgot the Lions and the Packers play week 18. So one way or another, one of those teams is losing. So they know they're going to have to face they have to hope the Seahawks lose, and then the winner of the Lions and the Green Bay Packers, whoever wins that game, lost the week prior. That's what they're hoping for.
I know the playoffs are going to be
so
crazy.
Weird. I can't wait. And we're definitely going to have to do a show later in the evening sometime this next week after this whole week is over. And then we can talk about the whole scenario thing again, because this is really hilarious thinking about just like all these different scenarios in here.
Yeah, because if the Steelers lose one more game, they're done. If the Raiders lose one more, they're done. So it'll really come down to the Jets and Dolphins to fight, and the Patriots to fight for that last 7th seed too. So,
yep, it'll be a lot of fun.
Anyway, so that is it for today's show for the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast. We went a little longer than expected, but we had a lot that we had to get into this show today. We'll do a shorter show next time. Make sure that everybody that was here, I appreciate you for tuning in, even though most of you guys have left. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day. This is the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast, signing off.